Well, I am Alejandra Crescentino. I am studying, I am a researcher at Universidad Autónoma de Madrid. And I was studying history of art in Argentina. So that's my situating point of view. And I was listening BGs when while writing this presentation. That's why I thought Staying Alive was a good title for the presentation. The purpose of my presentation is to reflect on some challenges affecting physical and digital archives dedicated to the art in the Southern Cone. To start this discussion, I will refer to some relevant Latin American video art festivals that foster the production, circulation, and dissemination of audiovisual arts in the last 2 decades of the 20th century, and additionally foster the creation of physical archives in the region. Secondly, I will explain some institutional and academic projects that since the mid-2000s have carried out tasks of valorization and remediation of video-based art collections. Since it is impossible to carry out an exhaustive study of all the institutions and archives dedicated to video art, I will focus on 4 academic institutional projects linked to 5 binary video art festivals. Regarding methodological project, how do I change the slide? Thank you. So as you can see, I was connected telepathically with the previous presentation. We have the same template. Well, I was talking about my methodology. I was visiting in person centers, archives in Chile, Argentina, and Spain. And in relation to the theoretical framework, I ascribe to the notion of remediation proposed by Butler and Racine, which alludes to the power of digital media to remediate all media through a process of refashioning. This argument allows us to conceive of today institutional databases as refashion extensions of physical archives and video-based art libraries. Referring to technological archives, Argentine researcher Jorge Laferla identified several difficulties linked to the absence of comprehensive collections to trace the memory of the audiovisual arts in Latin America. In his reflections, he pointed out the fundamental role played by the traveling video and experimental film exhibitions in the creation of archives, the theoretical reconstruction and the material recovery of pieces that were thought to be lost. He stressed that in the absence of consistent public policies for heritage protections, some institutions and agents have taken on the task of preserving and updating technological works that would otherwise remain inaccessible. These observations constitute a starting point to offer a rereading of the video art archives in the present. In order to understand the current state of the institutional physical archives, holding videographic works in analog media, it is necessary to look back at events that took place in the past. The use of video art as the use of video as support and means of artistic creation dates back to the early 70s, linked to a few institutions, as you can see on the screen. Among them, the Centro de Artes y Comunicación in Buenos Aires and the Museo de Arte Contemporánea at the Universidad de São Paulo, with paradigmatic trajectories in this regard. However, beyond these specific examples, video did not achieve a significant presence until the 80s, when some institutions in the Southern Cone held festivals and generated collections dedicated to the art, coinciding with the global expansion of mass media and new technologies. As Laferla pointed out, the proliferation of exhibitions and events around video during this period was a major factor in the creation of audiovisual archives. Likewise, video libraries became highly appreciated as they offer the possibility to consult audiovisual materials in different magnetic or optical formats. An example of such convergence is the Encuentros Latinoamericanos de Video, promoted by independent producers from all over Latin America. Among the hundreds of associations and collectives at the forefront of these meetings was the Centro de Medios Audiovisuales, an Uruguayan production company that stood out for its extensive audiovisual work. For this reason, it became the subject of an academic research project, which will be referred later in this paper. Video art also grew as an autonomous artistic discipline supported by international specialized circuit, thanks to the support of foreign financing agencies, especially those of the French and Spanish cooperation. Several festival exhibitions and awards were created. For instance, the Festival Franco-Chileno de Video Arte and the Festival Franco-Latinoamericano de Video Arte were consolidated thanks to the support provided by the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs and by numerous local institutions. For its first 10 years, Santiago de Chile was the capital, but since the 1990s, it has expanded to become a multi-site event that spread to Argentina, Uruguay, Brazil, and Colombia. As a result, each participating institutions formed a partial collection of the festival, safeguarding videographic pieces, vestiges, and documentation sources. Sao Paulo hosted the Video Brasil Festival, organized at first by the Museu da Imagem do Som. Later editions were organized by the Associação Cultural Video Brasil, together with the SESC. In the 1990s, the festival declared the expansion of its sphere of action to the entire geopolitical South and founded the association to host an increasingly broad heritage of documentation, publications, and video-based art collections. Today, there are no similar associations within Brazil or in the Southern Cone developing these tasks. Also in the late 80s, the Buenos Aires Video Festival was organized at the Spanish Cultural Center of Instituto de Cooperación Americana. The first editions were held under the exhibition format, proposing a local videographic panorama. Since 1994, the festival became competitive and included selections from other countries, which stimulate the circulation of Argentine production in the region. The advent of a digital network and globalized culture modified the ways of using and accessing information. Thus began a gradual process of institutional computerization in which computer tools became allies in the documentary management of archives and collection, displacing analog systems, and in the case of video libraries equipped with analog technologies and devices, this transformation led their deactivation as reference spaces, and their consultation materials become archaeological objects. Although many institutions have preserved these collections, very few have undertaken a process of digitization. On the other hand, the digital turn had an impact on the ways of looking at and thinking about the phenomenon of regional video art. There was a shift from the narratives of the national scenes delineated by events during the 80s and 90s to the construction of narratives from the local scenes connected and immersed in the global map of the network. Some institutions began to post large amounts of content and to communicate activities on their institutional websites. Simultaneously, new research projects began to explore the dispersed path of the art-technology relationship in the Southern Cone, under a format of associative work between institution and academia. Due to this interest, a significant number of platforms dedicated to regional video art began to emerge in the mid-2000s. Such projects have made online archives, which propose new reads on Latin American video art. As Walter and Rosin had pointed out, the research of intermediation, the research for intermediation runs through the entire history of media development in the West. Immersed in this logic, the new media have expanded in this capacity for mediation thanks to their power to incorporate almost all the previous supports and technologies. To allude to this, the authors have proposed to understand the notion of remediation as reform and as a repair of other media. Thus, remediation can be understood both as a form of mediation of a prior media and as a repair, a way of preventing danger, such as the fading away of works born under formats that have become obsolete. In the case of analogical archives, this remediation has been articulated from valuable research projects that rescue from obsolescence a part of those audiovisual archives linked to the path of festivals proposed above. I will offer some examples. One of the first to appear was UMATIC, Chilean Audiovisual Heritage Project. This initiative explored works made under this format in Chile between the year 1975 and 2000, including productions presented at the Franco-Chilenos and Encuentros Latinoamericanos, among others. The result of this research were articulated in 3 axes: the UMATIC exhibition at the Museo Arte Contemporáneo in Chile in 2005, the publication of the book Apuntes para una historia del video en Chile, and the creation of the website, now defunct, which exhibited digitized fragments of more than 20 selected audiovisual pieces and more than 400 technical files and reviews of video works. In 2008, it began the rescue of SNMAA's UMATIC archive project in Uruguay. As mentioned before, the Centro de Medios Audiovisuales was a company that developed significant video production since the 1980s and played a very active role in the organization of the Encuentros Latinoamericanos de Video. The team coordinated by Mariela Balas, supported by the Universidad de la República, undertook the digitization of the company's archive in order to save it from deterioration. Subsequently, they edited the book SNMAA, as you can see on the screen, which covered both the work carried out by this audiovisual collective and the trajectory of the research project. For its part, the cultural association responsible for the Video Brazil Festival has focused its efforts on maintaining a physical headquarters to protect its collection, made up of thousands of catalog audiovisual and documentary pieces. Among them, 1,500 are bibliographic works that have passed through the festival. Currently, its online institutional catalog provides access to files that offer a brief synopsis and image and details of their participation in Video Brazil. In close connection with the need to give visibility to works shown in the mentioned events, ISEA Argentino project was born. The initiative emerged also in 2008 to recover pieces of the history of Argentine video art. Coordinated by María Alejandra, it had the support of the Universidad Nacional de La Plata, in its website, revamped in 2021, embed videos and information from many other online platforms and sites. The collaborative non-profit nature of ARCA and some of the previous projects appeals to the interest of the authors themselves to circulate works, which helps to complete the history of the video art in the region. In this way, it avoids some of the difficulties posed by copyright when it comes to making this content accessible. After this mapping of art festivals, archives, and remediation projects, I would like to point out some problems video art archives have to face. Problems which pose methodological challenges to researchers interested in studying Latin American video art. The first is the geographical distance between the archives of the Southern Cone, which makes it difficult both to consult collections and to approach local and regional stories. Furthermore, while many of the institutions offer partial online cataloging records, others do not ever provide this information. Although presented as a better answer, the digital remediation of video-based art and their circulation on a few online platforms does not solve this problem. The dispersion of the audiovisual content and the difficulty of finding a corpus of works gathered in the same place also exists in a networked world. Nevertheless, most of the research projects that have online archives also facilitate cross-referencing with websites of related projects, an aspect that helps exploratory tasks. The second problems are the documentary gaps in archives. Historically, the criteria for the creation of video archives and video libraries have not been stable, nor have uniform standards been established for the registration and cataloging of the pieces incorporated. Audiovisual works usually come together with records of activities and various institutional documents related or not to these works. However, the biggest problems arise when institutions lack documentation or works edited or produced by the institution itself. Perhaps the only solution to the problems posed by the dispersion and gaps in the archives is to support local research projects in regular contact with institutional collections, capable of constructing critical readings and deepening the investigation of these materials in different archives. Only the circulation of multiple projects that propose this type of approach will make possible the articulation of new regional panoramic research. The third problem is the status of work and copyright. As a recurrent policy, video art activities and festivals stipulated in their terms and conditions that a copy of the selected work should remain at the disposal of the organizing institution. By participating, the author automatically consents that his or her work could be used for non-commercial cultural purposes. Thereby, the collection of these materials grew gradually according to the success of the events organized. In this way, the pieces presented acted as works when screened at the festivals, but regained their copy status on the archive. However, after the digital shift, many festivals ceased to be held and the video libraries closed their doors to the public. The physical support of video art pieces remained in a place of patrimonial lack of definition, sometimes aggravated by gaps in their documentation. This means that any type of audiovisual record for publication will incur in copyright problems. In this case, the solution implemented by projects such as ARCA have consisted of becoming an open collaborative platform. Its expansion strategy is based on achieving a voluntary assignment and offering hyperlinks to websites of authors and institutions which own the copyright of the original works or documentations. The last point is the inaccessibility and loss of works in unstable media. As long as archives and video libraries remain open, analog video artworks remain alive and continue to be included in multiple proposals. With the digital transformation, very few archives and institutional video libraries have undertaken the task of digitizing their collections, and many works became inaccessible. This has been excused on the ground of copyright issues and the high cost of digitization for the institutions. On the other hand, we start from the premise that both analog and digital supports are unstable, and although their digital remediation would allow extending their endurance, it is necessary to accompany such actions with others that provide them with meaning and ensure different ways of persistence. To conclude, what I wanted to show is that the work carried out by proposals such as the mentioned here constitute a multidisciplinary research projects that go beyond digital remediation. They open the possibility of generating new readings on collections that would otherwise disappear from the memory of regional art histories. As we have seen in this presentation, they favor the study and dissemination of video artworks through the conservation and remediation of historical pieces, and the expansion and reformulation of genealogies of video art in the Southern Cone. Thank you very much.